Alaska. Jedno z najbardziej niezwykłych miejsc na Ziemi. Jest to największy stan Stanów Zjednoczonych. Zajmuje powierzchnię ponad 5-krotnie większą niż terytorium Polski. Jednocześnie jest to stan o najmniejszej gęstości zaludnienia. Cały ten teren zamieszkuje mniej ludzi niż jedno duże polskie miasto, takie jak Kraków. To sprawia, że Alaska jest rajem dla osób, które uwielbiają obcowanie z dziką, nieskażoną przez człowieka przyrodą. A przynajmniej takim ono było. Dla osób takich jak ja, wychowanych na filmach przyrodniczych czytanych przez Krystynę Czubównę, odwiedzenie takiego miejsca jak Alaska może być spełnieniem marzeń. Dzikie krajobrazy tego terenu potrafią zachwycić. Jak jednak wygląda tutaj życie z perspektywy mieszkańców tego stanu? Zapytałem o to Irene i Jima, od urodzenia mieszkających w największym mieście stanu Alaska, Anchorage.
I think Alaska is unique in a number of ways. It's the largest state in the Union. It has the most wilderness and sort of untouched areas. It's a very diverse set of ecosystems, everything from old growth rainforest in southeast Alaska to Arctic desert tundra and ice in the north of Alaska. On the other side of that coin, though, is the city of Anchorage, where we live, is very cosmopolitan. It's an international crossroads. And so it's really kind of special and wonderful to live in a place where you can enjoy the things the city has to offer, but then in a half an hour you can be out where there's no people and it's just nature.
I love seeing the wild animals, even right on the street some days. Number one, moose, big moose, not little ones like they have in Sweden. And bears, mostly black bears, I would say. Mm-hmm. And just lots of birds and ducks and wildlife, fox and smaller animals. Sometimes a lynx has been seen even in Anchorage. Some of the animals are a little harder to spot, but when you do see one, it's like you just won the lottery. Guess what? I saw an animal that is kind of rare. We always enjoy the ride out of our neighborhood when we look up into a tree and we see a bald eagle. Huge thing. And we go, oh, there's our eagle friend. And yeah, you don't see that every day. And then we might call each other, whoever's in the car. When you drive by, our eagle is there. So it's, yeah, those things you see just in the city area. Yeah. Now, if you go out deeper into the woods and hiking, yeah, then you might see even more.
Więcej na temat lokalnej fauny opowiedział mi Rick Steiner, emerytowany profesor biologii morskiej na Uniwersytecie Alaski.
Well, right here at my home and outside of my office, we have bears, black bears and brown bears and coyotes and moose, a lot of moose here, lynx, sort of our wild cat come by frequently. That's just right here at my house in my little office cabin here. But throughout Alaska, you see brown bears a lot, polar bears up on the Arctic coast. I used to see them quite a bit when I lived in the Arctic. Offshore, you see all kinds of whales, sperm whales, humpback whales, killer whales, orcas, sea lions, harbor seals, sea otters, fur seals, walruses. Occasionally narwhals from from Canada come over on the Arctic coast of Alaska. Not often, but occasionally. Beluga whales, the white whales, the small white whale. We have tens of thousands of those here in Alaska. I mean, marine and the seabirds. More than 40 or 50 million seabirds come to Alaska every summer to nest and feed, raise their chicks, and then leave for the winter. It's an amazing place, seabird-wise. It's one of the most rich seabird habitats in the world. I mean, the ocean systems here are just phenomenal.
Niezwykle żyzne wody otaczające Alaskę sprawiają, że jest to jedno z najbardziej produktywnych łowisk na świecie. Dzięki temu ten jeden stan, Alaska, odpowiada za ponad połowę komercyjnych połowów w całych Stanach Zjednoczonych. Ale niesamowita przyroda, w tym niezwykle produktywne łowiska, to nie jedyny skarb tego stanu. Jest nim także ropa naftowa, nazywana czarnym złotem Alaski. Odkryto ją pod koniec lat 60. w North Slope na północy Alaski. Były to największe złoża tego surowca w całej Ameryce Północnej.
Once it was discovered, they realized there were probably 10+ billion barrels of oil in the ground, easily accessible. They didn't know how to transport it to market, how to get it to market. So they had this big debate at the time whether to build a pipeline across to Canada and down, or to build a pipeline across Alaska to marine waters and Valdez, Prince William Sound, as a way to ship it out. And so ultimately it came down to that. That was the choice selected.
Rurociąg doprowadzający ropę naftową z północy Alaski do portu Valdez ukończono w 1977 roku. Stąd wypływały tankowce dostarczające do Stanów kontynentalnych 0,5 miliarda baryłek ropy rocznie. W połowie lat 80. 20% amerykańskiej ropy pochodziło właśnie z portu Valdez. Wszystko było dobrze do czasu. Chwilę po północy 24 marca 1989 roku jeden z największych tankowców na świecie należący do koncernu Exxon o nazwie Exxon Valdez, który przewoził ropę naftową z portu Valdez do Los Angeles, wpłynął na skały w Zatoce Księcia Williama na Alasce, doprowadzając do największej katastrofy ekologicznej związanej z wyciekiem ropy naftowej. O przyczynach tej katastrofy rozmawiałem z Joe Lally, który od ponad 30 lat zajmuje się zawodowo wyciekami ropy naftowej.
The tanker left Valdez shortly, like around 9 p.m. on the 23rd of March in 1989. And just after midnight, it grounded on Bly Reef. And some of the things that came into play were they were trying to avoid ice coming out of Columbia Glacier, so they deviated out of the normal shipping lanes. But then the captain went below. The second mate was at the helm. He had, from what I hear, some fatigue issues, had been up a lot, didn't get much sleep between the day before and when they left. And so they did not swing back into the shipping lanes, and they grounded then on Bly Reef. And that's, when the spill happened.
First of all, you just kind of heard it on the local news, and television in the evening is kind of standard. And then we heard it was on the national news, that it had reached beyond the state of Alaska to the other 49 states. And that's pretty unique. So then as you're watching the national news a little bit later in the night, my father, who I was living here with them, would say, oh, it's on the real news now. It's hitting the whole country. And then my family, having relatives in Sweden, maybe a week or 10 days later, possibly 2 at the most, we start getting questions and phone calls from our relatives in Sweden. What's happening in Alaska? Are you okay? Are you drowning in oil?
Memories I have are oiled birds that people were finding. And, there was an effort made to clean those up. They would take oiled animals and try to scrub the oil off them and clean them, and to be able to release them back into the wild, but they couldn't release them back into the area where the oil spill was happening. And so I think a lot of birds and animals were either kept for a fairly long period, or didn't survive the process of trying to clean them. So, in addition to the birds and animals that died directly from the oil, there was a number that died due to cleanup efforts, and there was a number that were never really able to be released back into the wild again. So it was very all-encompassing. It really affected the ecosystem from top to bottom.
The official estimate was 250,000 barrels, about 40,000 tons of oil spilled, but we're very certain that at least twice that much spilled because of a number of factors. Regardless, a lot of oil came out. It was in March of 1989, right at the biological spring of Prince William Sound, right when the herring were coming in to spawn, the seabirds were coming back, the sea otters and harbor seals were getting ready to pup, the whales were returning. Everything happens. The salmon were just emerging from the stream, the little fry, and going out to sea, so it couldn't have happened at a worse and better place at a worse time.
W wyniku katastrofy tankowca Exxon Valdez śmierć poniosło ponad 2800 wydr, 300 fok, 20 orek, 250 orłów, 250 000 ptaków morskich i niezliczone ilości mniejszych organizmów, w tym ryb morskich. Dodatkowo ropa skaziła ponad 2000 km linii brzegowej. Katastrofa ta, po dziś dzień, jest uważana za największą pod względem negatywnych konsekwencji dla środowiska przyrodniczego. Nikt nie miał wątpliwości, że straty są ogromne, a Exxon powinien za nie zapłacić. Pojawił się jednak pewien problem. Jak je wycenić?
The big questions after the Exxon Valdez was, how do you value what was damaged? And it's easy to value things that are traded commercially in the marketplace, like commercial fisheries and things that are actually bought and sold. But most of what was damaged is not. You know, harbor seals, killer whales, sea lions, other fish species, seabirds, things like this, intertidal habitat. So the question became how to put a price on what was the priceless. And that's where the notion of non-market economics came into play, contingent valuation and benefit costs and things like that. And so they started doing these surveys of what you would be willing to pay or to accept for X amount of damage to a natural environment that's not traded commercially.
Wartości ekonomiczne są najlepiej odzwierciedlane przez ceny rynkowe. Mówią one nam, ile dana osoba jest skłonna zapłacić za jakieś dobro, czyli jaką ma ono dla niej wartość. Na niektóre dobra, w tym ekosystemy, nie ma rynku, a tym samym ceny. Nie oznacza to jednak, że nie mają one żadnej wartości. Ich wyceną zajmuje się ekonomia środowiska. Jedną z metod wykorzystywanych w ekonomii środowiska jest wycena warunkowa. Bazuje ona na wynikach badań ankietowych, gdzie respondentom zadaje się pytania, ile byliby skłonni zapłacić za dostęp do danego dobra, np. ekosystemu, bądź ile byliby skłonni przyjąć jako rekompensatę za utratę dostępu do niego. Wyniki badań wykonanych metodą wyceny warunkowej pokazały, że uszczerbek w dobrobycie społecznym spowodowany wyciekiem ropy naftowej z tankowca Exxon Valdez można szacować na od 3 do 15 miliardów dolarów. Niestety, na tamten moment metoda ta była przede wszystkim teorią naukową, a Exxon od razu zapowiedział, że będzie podważał wyniki otrzymane z jej pomocą w sądzie.
They knew about it. They knew that at trial that would be brought in, but that was an untested legal theory at the time, and it would have been very difficult. It was speculative whether that would be the basis for a jury award for damages. Optimistically, we thought it could, but Exxon would have argued that it didn't, and it shouldn't. So it was a toss-up as to whether that would have helped boost the recovery. Regardless, the important thing was getting enough money immediately to be able to help attend to the damages of the sound, and that's what the consent decree did in 1991, provided $1 billion over 9 or 10 years to the government to establish and conduct a restoration program.
Ostatecznie rząd i koncern Exxon podpisali ugodę. Niezależnie, zgodnie z zapowiedzią, koncern starał się zdyskredytować metodę wyceny warunkowej, aby w przyszłości, w razie podobnych sytuacji, nie można się było powoływać na jej wyniki w sądzie, pokazując, że przyroda ma większą wartość niż tylko jej znaczenie dla gospodarki. Sprawa nabrała rozgłosu medialnego i ostatecznie prezydent Stanów Zjednoczonych powołał specjalną komisję pod przewodnictwem 2 laureatów Nagrody Nobla z ekonomii, która miała przeanalizować sprawę i ogłosić wiążącą opinię. Jednoznacznie wykazano, że jest to metoda wiarygodna i może być stosowana w sądownictwie. Obecnie jest to jedna z najczęściej wykorzystywanych metod wyceny szkód środowiskowych. Uwiarygodnienie metody wyceny warunkowej obok wprowadzenia nowych regulacji prawnych, które miały zmniejszyć ryzyko podobnych wycieków w przyszłości, to nieliczne przykłady pozytywnych skutków katastrofy tankowca Exxon Valdez. Tych negatywnych jest znacznie więcej, o czym bardzo dobrze pamiętają mieszkańcy Alaski.
The impact was devastating initially, and it continues to this day. Most of the monitored populations and habitats have recovered, but about a third of them that the governments have monitored are not. 33 years later, there's still toxic oil on the beach. The AT1 killer whale pod and marbled murrelets and pigeon guillemots, these little seabirds, and herring are listed today, 33 years later, as not recovering at all.
If you look at Exxon now, they're still a very successful oil and gas company, and they make, the consequences of what happened to the Exxon Valdez did not mean that this company was going to suffer financial hardship. They continue to make, healthy profits, probably obscene profits at some level, and so, the consequences of this did not interrupt their business, truthfully, for any in any way.
So 30-some years later, it's, everybody's forgotten about it. But most Alaskans that have been here will definitely have a memory of it.
Yeah.
W wyniku podpisanego porozumienia z rządem Exxon zapłacił około $1 miliarda odszkodowania z oskarżenia publicznego za wyrządzone szkody środowiskowe. Podobną kwotą odszkodowania wywalczyli lokalni przedsiębiorcy, głównie rybacy, którzy oskarżyli koncern w procesie prywatnym. Przy czym ta druga batalia trwała niemalże 20 lat i zakończyła się dopiero w 2008 roku. Łącznie za spowodowanie największej katastrofy ekologicznej tego typu koncern wypłacił około $2 miliardy odszkodowania. Zysk tej wielkości Exxon wypracowuje w ciągu kilkunastu dni. Katastrofa tankowca Exxon Valdez na zawsze zmieniła oblicze Alaski. Tutejsze ekosystemy być może już nigdy nie powrócą do stanu sprzed 1989 roku. Czarne złoto okazało się być świetną inwestycją, ale przede wszystkim dla korporacji paliwowej. Każda lekcja jest jednak okazją do nauki. Na końcu mojego pobytu na Alasce zapytałem moich rozmówców, jakie wnioski ich zdaniem powinniśmy wyciągnąć z tego zdarzenia.
We're still in a position where the state of Alaska and many communities are willing to do a lot to keep oil and gas companies happy. They're unwilling to raise taxes on them. They give them tax benefits. They give them subsidies in order to encourage new investment and new development. And so that costs the state billions and billions of dollars in order to try to keep oil companies happy and still working in the state. And I think the reality of it is that that's really what I think would be good for the state of Alaska is to sort of wean ourselves off of oil and gas and to have that process happen more quickly than it is.
Like children. Get them off the mother's milk, and then eventually when they're 4 or 5, they can. Because
we're at a point too, within the global sort of, the global ecosystem when every drop of oil that's in the ground now needs to stay. We can't pump another drop out and burn it and expect the climate to do anything but get worse and worse and worse. So every drop of oil that's undeveloped really needs to stay in the ground.
If you really incorporate all future costs of oil, including climate and the military costs, look at these petro-dictators that are killing the world right now. Vladimir Putin, in Ukraine. He's funding his entire military and imperialistic ambitions based on oil and gas revenues. So if you look at all these costs, climate, militarization throughout the world, imperial ambitions of various petrostates, oil spill costs into the future with long-term damages and such like that, is it really cost effective to keep doing it? And the answer is no. That's a rhetorical question. We know the answer to that. So we need to start subsidizing our low carbon energy transition, taxing carbon more effectively, and using those funds to subsidize the low carbon energy transition. We know how to do this. We know we have to do it, but this stranglehold that the oil industry and the enormous political and wealth power that it holds over our democracy has been a hurdle to overcome. It's like the tobacco industry was smoking. For years they said, well, tobacco doesn't cause cancer. They were lying. They knew it, and they got away with trillions of dollars of additional revenue by killing hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people globally. The same is going on with oil right now. They're hanging on to this old economic model that they're getting rich. Trillions of dollars still left to be made by the residual oil and gas and even coal in the Earth's crust. And they are not willing to really make a tangible effort at a low carbon transition away from that, because they are the beneficiaries of those extractive revenues. But we've got to be smarter than that. We have got to be smarter than that.